Welcome, everyone, to the Citations Needed live stream. I guess I will do the official honors. Welcome to Citations Needed, a podcast on the media, power, PR, and the history of bullshit. I'm Nima Shirazi.
I'm Adam Johnson.
Um, we are doing this live update as you all know, we know that things are moving rapidly and horrifically as Israel and the United States continue their war crime assault on Iran. Um, at latest update, the death toll of Iranians in Iran is now above 1,000, probably an undercount, but that's coming out of Iranian media. The vast majority of these are, I'm sure, civilian deaths. As of yesterday, according to the Iranian Red Crescent Society, uh, 787 Iranians had been killed, and that has surely risen by now. And that, of course, includes, and this is something we're gonna talk a bunch about today, includes the at least 165 school children and staff who were killed at the primary school, the elementary school in Minab, the Iranian city in the south of the country, that kind of inaugurated this criminal assault on Iran. It was one of the very first things that happened. I think I've seen some news blips, Adam, about who is responsible for that. Israel, the US, it doesn't fucking matter. But we can also talk about the kind of trajectory of how this news spread, because it is very telling in terms of the kind of process by which war crimes occur and then are reported on in our press, always giving cover, of course, to the United States and Israel. But yeah, so we have a lot to get to today. Obviously, we've heard from um, the Trump administration that this is just the beginning, that there is far worse to come. A lot of dick swinging and disgusting language from everyone associated
Yeah.
with that administration, from the president to the Secretary of Defense or war crimes, to their spokespeople, to Marco Rubio. Everything is quite appalling. And yeah, and I know we have a lot to get to. And Adam, you wrote a really, really excellent piece, um, a very important article that I would love to kind of start with. It's on your site, your Substack. The column, everyone should check it out if they haven't already. Was published today. It's called "Corporate Media Buries Story of U.S. and Israel Killing 168 in Girls' School Attack." And Adam, I just because you've been covering this and kind of following the trajectory of that particular story, that'll lead us to other pieces of this. But would love for you to kind of lay
Well,
out some of
yeah,
the stuff that you talk about in that article.
it's an object lesson in dehumanization. So 168 people is the estimated death toll right now. It's actually, as it turns out, incidentally, the exact same death toll of the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. So I think it's a good reference point for like how devastating it is. But unlike the Oklahoma City bombing, it's actually majority little girls. It was I guess, the equivalent of an elementary or early middle school. So roughly 140 to 150 of the 168 who died were girls, little girls. Now, under normal circumstances, I think in a morally healthy society, this would have been an outrage. Certainly, if this is something that had happened in the United States or in Europe or in Israel, it would be an outrage. It would have blared on the front pages of major newspapers. It would have been given entire segments in our nightly news. It would have been given central, would have been questions would have been asked about it on the Sunday news shows. But what I found is that didn't happen at all. This was relegated to a back page story. In the New York Times, it was A11. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, which are kind of the three major papers as a reference point, none of them had a single front page story about this equivalent of Oklahoma City bombing that wiped out 150-ish, 140-ish young girls, including teachers and other staff. Um, this was mentioned briefly as far as the Sunday news shows go, because this happened 30 hours ish before the Sunday news shows, so they knew about it. Meet the Press didn't mention it. CBS's Face the Nation didn't mention it, and indeed, CBS's Face the Nation didn't mention any Iranian civilian deaths, but only mentioned Israeli deaths, and in fact spoke to their correspondent about Israeli deaths, as did NBC's Meet the Press. ABC's This Week did briefly mention it. And CNN's Jake Tapper mentioned it once. And CNN's Jake Tapper and Donna Bash in their Sunday morning show mentioned it once in a softball question to the Prime Minister of Israel, who then refuted their responsibility and then moved on without any pushback. So it was relegated to a back page story. And this is indicative of a broader dehumanization effort, as obviously we've been documenting in Gaza for almost 2.5 years now, where these hundreds of people, sort of 3-digit death counts we hear, whether it's the Al Shifa hospital bombing on October 17th, whether it 2023, whether it's these the sort of quote unquote rescue mission that killed roughly 900 people, just mass slaughter. It's just a blip in the media map. It doesn't matter. Things that in a moral, normal, healthy society would be galvanizing an anti-war movement to say, how could this happen? Again, the U.S. is the aggressor here, right? Now, what's really interesting is the attribution issue. So a new standard emerged in Gaza after the Al Shifa hospital bombing, or rather, not the Al Shifa hospital bombing. Rather, there was the Al Shifa hospital invasion. The October 17th was the Al Ali hospital bombing. Forgive me. That was October 17th, 2023. And that killed between 250 to 500 people. It's not clear because so many of them were just evaporated. And that was initially, and I think absolutely very empirically, obviously correctly attributed to Israel, since they're the ones bombing Gaza. That would logically follow they're the ones that bombed the hospital. But there was just an inch of doubt that they could issue, because it was probably a mortar from Israel rather than an airstrike, to blame a errant PIJ rocket. This Israel manufactured evidence to this extent. This was a huge kind of media campaign. So then on October 17th and October 18th, there was a bully campaign by every single pro-Israel organization under the sun to basically say they were doing Hamas propaganda by saying Palestinian or Gaza officials say, Israel airstrike killed, 300, 400 people, whatever. This was seen as evidence of some anti-Semitic conspiracy. After the October 17th, 2023 bombing of the Al Ali hospital, two major things changed. Number one, the New York Times and CNN, I know definitively from sources I spoke to for my book, which I incidentally just happened to have gotten in the mail today, said that they changed policy where until Israel confirms their responsibility for an airstrike, you cannot say that Israel committed the airstrike. So you can't use common sense or inference or logic, which again is a standard they used in Russia, Ukraine. I have a source at CNN who said he had never heard of the standard until they introduced it. So until they can A, geolocate it, and B, have the IDF confirm it, they cannot ascribe responsibility to the IDF. What appears to be happening with the Manab bombing that killed 168 people this past Saturday morning is that same standard is applying. That news outlets are not a single one that I've seen. AP, Reuters, Guardian sort of did it eventually because they did an investigation and said, yeah, it's clearly the U.S. or Israel. It's appearing on American hit list maps. They're not ascribing responsibility to the U.S. and Israel. Now, they're not using the same standard for airstrikes that Iran, gets hits in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They are automatically assuming that Iran did it, not that it's an errant rocket from the IDF or friendly fire, because that's all they really have, right? They can't say there's not another party to the bombing. And so, in my piece, what I noticed is that forget attribution. That's just that's not going to happen. Can we at least talk about it? Now, it did get in the nightly news. It wasn't given a single segment, so there was no 2 or 3 minute what they call a news segment about it. It was given brief mention a handful of times, 3 times on CBS, twice on NBC, and twice on ABC in passing. So little 3 or 4 second mentions, and each time it was Iranian state media claims, Israel and U.S. denies the allegations but says they're investigating. If anyone knows anything about these so-called Israeli investigations into war crimes, you have about as much chance as waiting for Santa Claus or Jesus to come down from heaven. They never materialize. Obviously, it's just a kind of hand wave away to get liberals off your back. And that was the central focus of the coverage. The extent to which NBC did do a segment on it, they of course just put it online, so it didn't actually air in any of their news programs. And this is typical. This is something that again we've seen. Obviously, it predates it, but the sort of the dehumanization effort as it confines to this nonstop Israeli and U.S. aggression, whether it be in South Lebanon, whether it be in Syria, whether it be in Yemen, whether it be in Gaza, whether it be in Iran. They're going down a hit list, and there's a playbook, and the playbook is that you have to sort of acknowledge that 168, 140 some odd little girls
Hmm.
were evaporated by an airstrike. You can't sort of ignore it, but you sort of check the box. You frame it as an allegation by Iranian state media. And by the way, the pro-Israel trolls are working overtime in Wikipedia because every single claim on Wikipedia is according to Iran officials, right? The sort of
Hmm.
it's the new. Oh, and I forgot
It's a
the second
new,
thing. Sorry, I forgot the second
Hamas
thing that.
health ministry.
Well, right. That was the second thing that happened after October 17th, the Al hospital bombing. In addition to the needing GPS coordinates and IDF sign off from the New York Times and CNN, who the only ones I can confirm. I'm sure other media organizations adopted similar policies. You had to say Hamas, according to Hamas run health ministry. This was something that was virtually unused. In fact, prior from October 7th to October 17th of 2023, and we did a robust search. It was not used at all by the New York Times, the AP, the Washington Post, Reuters, Axios, any of those organizations. And then after October 17th, or CNN or MSNBC, what then was MSNBC, and then it exploded. It's New York Times used it, CNN used it. I think CNN eventually maybe dropped it after pushback from some of their Middle East reporters who thought it was obviously meant to delegitimize an increasingly
Hmm.
sprawling body count. Because if you say according to Hamas health ministry, then you can sort of just may as well say it's not real, it's fake. And so when you bracket these massive death counts with according to Iranian state media or Iranian regime, I think what CBS says regime officials, right? That's the Barry Weiss regime officials, right? That's basically liberalese for yeah, don't worry about it. It's not really that. It's not. It's not.
Hmm.
It's not real. It's
Oh, you
fake,
can't
or it
trust
was an it
them. You
was an
can't trust
errant
them.
Iranian rocket.
Right.
Um, now, again, we know that
That
they.
that that yeah, then it becomes state propaganda rather than an act like a
Well, of
like a
course,
like a crime that has been
and
committed.
these
Yeah.
are Pete Hegseth, who's a completely psychotic, uh, just a angry, mean, cruel rapist drunk who goes up and gives the speech about boasting, pumping his chest about how we're taking the gloves off and we're coming at you and we're the bully. And it's like, okay, I mean, again, this is different than the more like mopey liberalese we usually criticize, but it's obviously the effect is the same. And certainly that level of sadism portends more civilian deaths. They don't even really bother denying it. They sort of hand wave it away and move on. So I think it was very clearly either a U.S. or Israeli airstrike. I know that Manab appears on the grid of targets they've presented to the media, with the green circle being directly on the school. And so, this is one of these things that happened in the first 12 hours of this unprovoked attack, which again, unprovoked, right? Iran wasn't threatening anyone. Iran didn't attack anyone. It was committing pre-crime,
Well,
that
but the only pre-crime is that it exists.
well,
Like
it
it
exists.
like there
It
was
exists.
like
Yeah, it exists not under the U.S. The submission of U.S. and Israeli
exactly,
dictates, right?
exactly.
And so what they're trying to do to Iran, as we discussed on Monday, is they're trying to do, um, or was it Sunday? I forget. They're trying to do the Lebanon model. They supposedly are going for regime change, and they're sure they would obviously want that. But absent that, they're trying to provoke sectarian war. The CIA is now obviously are they for a long time. I'm sure. I don't think they suddenly just reached out to the Kurds. Last week. I'm sure they've been working on this for several months, if not much longer. They're the I guess Iranian Kurds in Iraq, not to be confused with Iraqi Kurds, are beginning to. Sorry, that's my downstairs neighbor. Are beginning to attack supposedly the so-called regime forces, and this is a major escalation, and will obviously the goal is destabilization. The goal is to turn it into 1,000 Lebanons that can be weak and perpetually bombed and humiliated, and along ethnic and sectarian lines. Iran, it's always been much harder to do that with. It's, unlike Syria and unlike Iraq, it's not that sectarian in terms of breakdown. It does have, millions of ethnic minorities. Obviously, very few of them wish to be pawns in a U.S. imperial aggression, but obviously some do for their own reasons. And so that's the plan, and that's obviously very bad. And again, I think as we speak, there's supposedly, and maybe we can get a real-time update on this, Nima, a War Powers Act vote, because Congress, again, it's been over 2 weeks since this armada began to form, and Trump planned this attack on Iran. So no rush. They're
Yeah.
getting around to it, running through the motions, sleeping through the motions. Um, and this supposed it failed the Senate. Okay, so um, Republicans defeat measure to halt Iran strikes despite growing anxieties. So the Senate. So do we have a rotating villain this time? Of course, Rand Paul supports it because he's full of shit. Two key moderate Republicans both voted to block the resolution. So clearly, this was all kind of staged.
Yeah, this is all a setup to somehow
Well,
legalize something that is
it's
that
so
is
Democrats.
illegal. I mean, so one thing I
It was
also
along
just want to
party
make
lines, but it was
make
yeah, it was so
clear, this
Democrats
is,
can wash their hands of it, despite the
of
fact that
course,
again, this took yeah.
I mean, so look, this is all sort of you know, filed under who gives a shit at this point. But you know, I do think it is still worth noting that regardless of what Congress does to authorize or not authorize this aggression through the War Powers Act, that doesn't make it not illegal, right? Like it may make it legal under US law, but it doesn't make
Well,
it
right,
legal under
yeah.
international law. But I just want to make clear, like there's as if there's some magic wand that like absolves the United States and then also Israel of these you know these egregious crimes, this initiation of a war of aggression, totally unprovoked, and just slaughtering people en masse, and assassinating leadership. Um, you know, I know international law doesn't matter, which is why this gets filed under who gives a shit. But to be clear, regardless of what the United States Congress says, this doesn't like absolve the aggressors here. It doesn't somehow
Well, yeah.
legalize
No, of course not. Yeah.
what is happening. It just means that we are able to see kind of just how on board the kind of full might of the United States government is in lockstep with this criminal administration. Um,
Well, the good thing is that Democratic leadership can now wash their hands of it because they've run the token vote over
right.
2 weeks after this began. So that's nice for them. I suppose they can say not my problem.
Yeah, and then they'll run
There's
on
also
this in the
there's a House
midterms or
vote.
whatever.
There's a House vote in the work as well. And the thing with this is that, like you said, obviously it doesn't matter what the U.S. What the U.S. Congress does. Is that there isn't any like the primary focus of the first days of the media coverage, which is obviously the first 5 days we're covering here. It's decapitation strikes. They're using the same anodyne kind of language, taking out leadership. Um, there's no sense of the gravity of like what is going on here. And the opposition is mostly, again, is there an exit strategy? What's the plan? It's all sort of a lot of process. And there's just a glibness.
Mhm.
I don't want to be pontificate too much here, but I mean, I'm an American, obviously I live in America. Even when you follow the media, it's a lot of like snark and jokes, and it's just nobody takes anything seriously. Like there was a Washington Post story today, which I criticized, that was about Claude, this, the Anthropic,
The AI.
so-called artificial intelligence
Yeah.
that is helping find targets. This same sort of AI moral laundering they did with Gaza, that read as an infomercial for Claude, basically lobbying the government to maintain their contract because they had some dispute over particular guardrails. And it talks about how they can do the find targets that in 20 hours it used to take 1,000 hours, and they can find targets faster than Iran can respond. So finding targets is supposedly what this technology does, based on God knows what kind of inputs. And the piece didn't mention the bombing of the girls' school that killed 168 people, which is a huge omission if they're saying that this is effectively these targets are being automated. Wouldn't that be something you would at least address, this egregious war crime, in addition to, again, attacks on hospitals, attacks on other schools? Um,
It's also a war
and there was
crime to
this like
kill
there
the
was this
leadership of a country. I just want to also note, like, I
yes, it
know
is
there's this whole
obviously
like,
yeah.
there's this whole thing about like, oh, no, well, what's happening is bad, and the girls being murdered is bad, but also, I mean, no one's mourning the loss of, Khamenei or whatever. It's like, okay, I I, I cannot think of a single time, certainly in modern history, when one nation state, let alone a UN member, and again, none of this matters. I'm aware of that. But a, a UN member state, two UN member states, attack another UN member state, and one of the very first acts is slaughtering the leader of that country, the head of state. And
No, I
I
mean
don't
it's
care if
unheard
you
of.
like. I don't care if you're like, oh well, he was a bad person. Look at the history. Look at the what. It doesn't. That first off, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, this is ridiculous. Also, then we get the like spycraft, hoopla stories of,
Right.
what it took to, assassinate the head of state of Iran, a country with a constitution, a country with a 5,000 year history, a country that was not cobbled together by colonial powers. The head of state of this country. Ooh, how did you possibly find him? Well, he was in his fucking office above ground where he fucking lives. So
Yeah, no,
like,
Financial Times did one of those like sexy Zero Dark 30, which is definitely a trope we should talk about. But real quick, I want to talk about that, how they framed the killing of a head of state as this like, you know, there was some B-roll of people cheering, and I'm sure there was some people cheering. I'm sure there were people who again who didn't like him.
sure,
But that was elevated to this sort of popular sentiment for which they had no evidence. And here was one. This is how they reported on the death of the girls, and then immediately pivoted to the sort of moral. This is Charlie D'Agata at Barry Weiss's CBS, and this is not like me editorializing. We can't play the clip because obviously reading it. This is straight what happened. This is an actual reading of it. I'm not splicing this together deceptively. Quote: Iranian state media said more than 100 were killed at an elementary school. Iranian state media said that more than 100 were killed at an elementary school, comma, some Iranians cheered in the streets as news of the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and unquote. And so he immediately goes to saying more than, state media says 100 girls died, but, and then he cuts to jubilant crowds cheering, saying, but they're cheering. So it's sort of worth it, right? That's
mm-hmm,
collateral
mm-hmm,
damage. Don't worry about that. This is a war of liberation. They're going to greet us as liberators. Um, so I guess the people who are murdering their children in mass, they're going to rise up alongside of them and fight with them for some unknown reason because they apparently have no dignity. But I want to go back to about the sort of the
yeah,
what I was saying about Claude and this kind of like glibness.
of course,
And you're reading this article and you would think it was a technology that helped you more efficiently like manage your DoorDash menus. It was so detached from the human element of it. And they had some throwaway line from some CNAS professor. And CNAS, of course, is funded by these AI companies. It's funded by Google. It's funded by the um, the Defense Department's AI program. So this is how you launder the propaganda. And he has some hand wringing about the ethics of it, and they just move on. And it's like complete box checking. There's not any consideration that there's humans on the other end of this. And I think Americans in general, but American media particularly, is so dehumanized to the mass slaughter of brown people. And I wish I had a better way to put it because it's not quite Muslim and it's not quite Arab. And obviously they're not Arab, but it's just brown people, the sort of undifferentiated Muslim coded masses, we'll call it. It's very bleak. It's very there's not a sense of like actual human stakes. And meanwhile, you sort of I don't I maybe it's cultural. I don't know. I don't obviously I don't live outside of the United States, but I'm curious, do like other countries they take this stuff more seriously? And this ties into this idea of dignity and the
mm-hmm.
assumption and where dignity comes in here. Ali Abdul Nima talks about dignity a lot. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, where there's this idea that these countries who are seen as recalcitrant or off program or not under the not run by some Gulf dictator, The assumption is they must be humiliated. They must be, we want the Southern Lebanon treatment. Again, 500 Lebanese people have been killed since the so-called ceasefire with Hezbollah a year and a half ago. And Hezbollah fires back after they, invade Iran, and they say, Hezbollah attacks Israel, like it's sort of
Israel. Yeah.
unprovoked.
Yeah.
And there's a sense that like everybody has to be humiliated, has to sacrifice their dignity. And by the way, they're going to be so humiliated that they rise up with the country that's bombing their children. Okay. Um, and that is something we sort of take for granted. And I wonder, I am pontificating here. We don't usually do this on this show, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and we're just sort of, I know we're processing this horrific event. To what extent, like, do we just not picture people with dignity in this country? Because we don't really have it. There's not a
Mhm.
sense of weight. There's not a sense of moral gravitas. It's everything's a fucking video game.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Trump's a more extreme version of it, right? Where you have like Pete Hegseth, who sounds like he's playing Call of Duty. I mean, literally, he sounds
Yeah.
like. And there's not, and then the media kind of giggles through it or does these slick, again, techno thriller write ups that they're just baby bird fed from the Defense Department or from these government contractors. And there's not a,
Yeah.
it's just from one to the other. We killed this baddie. We killed that baddie.
Hmm.
This Hamas baddie. This guy. Oh, 40,
Yeah.
40 Palestinians died. Whatever. 100 Palestinians died. Mowed down, shot. Don't care. Move on. There's no like sense of the horrific untold suffering that we are leveling against these populations, we being the United States, that's going to
Yeah.
have ramifications for decades. It's obviously bad in and of itself, but it's like you're creating hundreds of thousands of of orphans themselves, again, maimed children who are going to grow up without the ability to use their arms or legs. And we haven't even processed the gravity of that. And we're just moving on to some other bad guy.
Well, yeah, because effectively been we've been taught to understand that the United States and Israel operate outside of kind of a communal compact, or like a, like a interconnected human world, where no one else actually has real lives. They're either statistics, or they're kind of NPC avatar
Yeah.
things that we can just move around. Like, I mean, quite simply, like in our politics and media in the United States, certainly we humanize Iranians only when they can be exploited as victims of their own government. And as soon as
Or
that
or, or, or,
stops,
or they're the native informants, right? Who
right,
go
of
on and talk
course.
about how they want you to
But
vote
like
and
as
everything.
soon as that ability stops, or as soon as that utility doesn't exist, that kind of transactional element of how we ascribe humanity to certain populations at certain times for certain purposes. Once that transaction has been concluded and we're on to the next thing, that humanity evaporates. That is gone. Because it was never really there to begin with. It was always just transactional.
Right.
And I mean, this is so kind of almost obvious to say, but like, when there were mass protests in Iran, um, the crocodile tears being shed by the media here, by anyone certainly who's Israeli, is fucking ridiculous. But like all of that, oh, we have to protect the rights of Iranians, and
Yeah.
their government is like none of that was genuine. Like no
Well,
one
yeah.
who used that actually gave a shit about Iranian lives. It was all just one more move on the game board to get us
Right.
to this. And so, it's the same reason why, these kind of common epithets have to be said. Of course, the Iranian regime is evil, but right, like
Yeah.
you're just doing the thing that gets people murdered,
Well,
and
because words
and
don't
and
exist in a vacuum.
their murderers absolved. Like that
Yes.
is what that is doing. That is all that is doing. And it doesn't mean that you can't be honest about oppressive governments. It doesn't mean you can't be honest about aspirations of people or about movements, for self-determination. Of course. But what you're doing, and especially when you're doing that in the United States,
Right.
European or Israeli press, is it has a purpose and it serves a purpose. And the purpose is what you saw with nearly 200 children being erased from the fucking face of the earth by Israel and the United States to kick off um, a new horror in this world that in a way has no precedent. Not to be kind of sensational about it, but like when the Bush administration and its willing partners across the government and across the world invaded Iraq, um, there was a ridiculous process, but there was a process, right? There was a process to try and make some case that they never made. And obviously there were mass protests and everyone knew what was going on. This gets rid of that pretense of giving a shit at all, and is simply uh the most kind of naked exercise of power and of violence to discipline the unruly populations, the unruly governments that dare question what this empire demands that they do, and how much they kowtow to the United States and Israel. I mean, I think I said this last time we were talking, Adam, but Iran is the only country that um, made it state policy to not only rhetorically but materially support resistance against Israeli apartheid and occupation and siege and ethnic cleansing and genocide in Palestine.
Well, clearly
Um,
that was their original sin. I mean,
and right, no, I mean, and
all the
that
other
and
stuff
that
is
as we've
window
discussed,
dressing.
right, that is, that is a large part of why Iran gets the propaganda treatment that it does, and now gets the murder treatment that it is facing because of that commitment um, to stand up against American empire and Israeli hegemony. And
I want
so we're seeing what that kind of how the kind of most violent end of that when it comes to the way that an empire and an apartheid state, both nuclear armed, react to that when they truly have seen that for 880 days the genocide has received zero pushback. So they're like, oh, we can literally do whatever we want.
well, yeah, I want to talk a bit about the domestic element to this moving forward because I think just today there's a supplemental package in the Senate asking for 50 billion more dollars for this, right? They're spending $1 billion today, according to the Atlantic. I'm sure it's more. And we've seen headline after headline after headline over the last 2 years, especially $40 billion to Israel, $1 trillion military budget. Trump's asking for a $1.5 trillion military budget. Meanwhile, of course, the United States is crumbling. Infrastructure, something like 60% of teachers have a side job or a side hustle doing Uber Eats and other sort of side hustles. This is something we've seen again, name it, whether it's the cost of housing, whether it's the sort of we're training our LLM replacements, the scam economy, gambling apps. There's a rot going on here, and as we kind of we ship out more and more money. Now, I know you can do empire and also do social welfare. That's what defined the 60s, right? I'm not saying that they're mutually exclusive, but increasingly they seem like they are. And I think that there is going to be a major blowback. And you see this in the polls. This is why Gavin Newsom just last night, said Israel's an apartheid. He's kind of checking these buzzword boxes, both from Democratic base, increasingly from Republicans. I think there's going to be a lane in opposition to this nightmare. I think it begins to add up. It has very little domestic support. Again, 7% of Democrats support this so-called war. And not even a majority of Republicans support it. I think there's going to be a blowback. And I think that blowback's going to look like one of two things. It's going to look like a sort of genuine, coherent left-wing anti-imperialism, or it's going to be a Tucker 2028 run that's going to be the most racist, anti-Semitic thing you've ever seen in your life. And that if in the event that they try to jam through another, Pete Buttigieg or these kind of shitty Zionist liberals, I think that that's going to open up space for a dark, a right wing, which is again manifestly going to be anti-Muslim, is manifestly going to be anti-Palestine in practice. Because again, we already went through this with Trump, right? And you see
Hmm.
JD Vance
Hmm.
trying to do this with all these leaks about how he's opposed to this or what. He knows where the so-called base is at. He knows that everyone under the 45, whether they're right or left, hates this shit, right? This is a
Hmm.
fucking boomer
Hmm.
wet dream. Like literally, no one, regardless of where you are in the spectrum, this is just not popular. And I think that that's what's going to happen, that there needs to be an articulated anti-imperialist position. And again, I don't put a lot of hope in electoral politics, especially lately. I'm kind of maybe growing more cynical towards that. But it feels like that's kind of where we're at, that this is the last chance. This is the last time you're going to have these psychotic, violent boomers. This is the chance to take out Iran. This is the time where you don't give a shit about public opinion. Public opinion doesn't fucking matter. You have someone like Trump who's uniquely suited to do that.
Hmm.
Um, and of course, they have technological advantage. They have them weakened, and that this is the kind of grand plan. They got the hit list, right? They're going through it: Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, name it, whatever.
Hmm.
And like, I just again, there's going to be so much sophistication around how these APAC Democrats frame their Zionism as actually peaceful. And again, I've written about this. We did a whole episode on this, right? I support two-state solution I'll even box check apartheid, and I may even say genocide. But ultimately, we're just going to go back to business as usual,
Hmm.
or do what Biden did when Saudi Arabia fell out of favor. And when he ran in 2020, he said we're going to make him a pariah. Then he got in office and just gave him $2 billion in weapons, and we all just kind of
Right.
moved on.
Right.
Which is probably what's going to happen. It's going to be like a sort of Buttigieg or Newsom type who's like, oh yeah, we're gonna really punch back at Israel and show them that we mean business, and we're gonna shut down the genocide in Gaza, and they're gonna get in there and just go back to doing what Biden did, unless it's somebody with credibility. And I have some ideas of who that would be, but I don't want to electioneer. Um, and that to me is what like I think that's the reason why I bring that up is not to sort of how is it about me, America, the protagonist of the world. I bring it up because I think this is one of the reasons why there's such speed and urgency and a total lack of giving a shit what the public thinks, because I do think there's a window here that they feel like they have to take advantage of. They
Hmm.
being,
Hmm.
whatever pro-Israel military industrial complex, whatever sort of formation you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that I think is one of the reasons why we're getting this very shoddy, half-baked propaganda campaign that's completely post facto. They can't even get their story straight because
Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
Because they know it doesn't matter. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Rubio can say contradictory things and ultimately it doesn't matter. Trump can say whatever he wants. It doesn't actually matter. I'm anticipating um tomorrow's vote. That would then be Thursday, March 5th, the vote in the House on the War Powers Act. Um, which again, even if it passes, that just means that then Congress debates
Right.
what to do, right?
Well,
It's
there's
not
some there's
the,
some interpretations that say it does stop the war, but then they would immediately
but there's
follow
like
it
a
with a vote.
30-day thing. There's a this, there's a that. Who
The
sure.
Massey one does not have that, but again, it would
Okay.
immediately I believe it would immediately trigger a vote, and we have no idea how that would go.
Right. But here's the thing.
Because what do they always do? They always say we have to protect the troops. So
Right.
they're debating the supplemental package, and how they frame it? Oh, we got to protect the troops. Remember with Iraq, we always had to provide them flak jackets.
But
If you opposed it, you wanted troops to die.
what I think is going to happen regardless though. I mean, I don't think it's going to pass. Um but you know, when the House vote fails, um the media, I think, will then seize on the Senate and the House authorizing that, right, being an
Yeah,
authorization. So then, kind of ex post facto, this will be legitimized
right.
by the representatives of the American people. And I think we know that the majority of those elected officials actually have no problem slaughtering Iranians. They're
Well, I mean
down. They're
That's why
totally
Schumer and
down with
Jeffries
it.
delayed the vote, right? Because they knew this would
Right.
happen.
They knew this would happen, and now they
You
can
can't
kind
stop it
of
once it started.
grandstand on it, but actually
Yeah.
they like have no problem with dead
No.
Iranians. And so some of the rhetoric politically that we may see will be to attack Trump, not to attack the acts that are
Right.
being conducted. It
Well,
will be
that's why
to
you do the
attack
what's the plan thing.
process, right? What's the plan? This is what's I don't hear a strategy. I don't hear not these are war crimes. This must stop instantly. And
Right.
then, beg forgiveness for the world and pay reparations forever, if not unconditionally surrender to Iran. But like, that, of course, is not going to happen. Um, it's just going to be then retroactively legitimized, and the media is going to run with that as then this being authorized somehow by the United States, which will then provide even more cover, even more absolution for the ongoing slaughter of human beings.
Yeah, I mean, for Democrats, it's all about inertia and plausible deniability. Actually, Democratic leadership. I don't want to generalize too much. I think there are a handful of Democrats who've been pretty outspoken about it, but a lot of it, I mean, again, from the Armada being launched on February 18th to February 26th, which is 8 full days, almost
Yeah.
9 days, neither Schumer nor Jeffrey said a single word about this. I mean, that is extraordinary. What could again what very well could be, and in many ways already is the worst disaster and direct U.S. military since Vietnam. I mean,
Yeah.
it would probably end up being worse than Iraq, to be honest. Um, is just it's just not something worth their time. And
Hmm.
that's where you're
Hmm.
like, okay, this is just an inertia play because clearly you can't oppose it because again, only 7% of Democrats, you know, support it, which is so absurdly low. I don't think people understand how low that is. Right? That is more Democrats voted for Trump than support this war. More Democrats think the 2020 election was stolen than support this war. So they know that, and they just let inertia take its course, and now
Hmm.
they get to register the meaningless vote that sort of ostensibly says they're opposed to it. This is all again. I predicted this would happen 2 weeks ago. I mean, this is the game, right? Feigned helplessness, indifference, no moral arguments, no
Hmm.
bully pulpit,
Hmm.
no rhetoric, no social media posts, no nothing, no like, hey, we should do something about this. So you wait till the very last second, wait till you can't stop the war powers vote, then you hitch your wagon to it, and then you know it's DOA.
Yeah.
Because these things are not usually surprises. I think there's some surprises around what the specific vote will be, but generally it's decided behind closed doors.
Hmm.
And that is, I think there, to the extent to which I saw some genuinely frightened looking Democratic senators yesterday, I think that after their, intelligence briefing, I think some of the people who were indifferent or kind of yawning through it seem to be genuinely frightened. My guess is they see a genuine plan for American troops, which is looking increasingly likely. And the only thing that anyone cares about is people coming home in body bags. They don't care how many people we kill with our death robots and our Claude algorithms, as long as it's not so-called boots in the ground, right? This kind of facile, morally facile position, as if that matters. And they seem like they're seeing the blowback and pushback for that. But again, I mean, when Dropsite originally reported on why Schumer was not opposing the first bombing in June of 2025, they suggested that one of the reasons, in addition to him just supporting it ideologically,
Hmm.
was that he thought it would play well in the midterms for Democrats, which is obviously again back to my original point about is it's a video game. It's
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
these are not we just do not pathologically, institutionally, as a country, as our leadership does not view these people as humans. They are NPCs in a geopolitical game, and at best, to the liberal imagination, again, if you can torture it enough in the Atlantic or the New York Times, they're just prisoners being held captive by evil regimes, and we have
Yeah.
to kill
Yeah.
several tens of thousands of them to liberate them from said regime.
Right.
We have to burn the village to save it. Um, and there's nothing serious about any of this. It's all very abstract, very rhetorical, very divorced. And one of the reasons is because there's no, it's not like Chuck Schumer is going to get bombed, right? It's not like Donald Trump's going to get shot at. These are not morally serious people. These are frivolous, power hungry, ideologically driven, venal. Like they're so separate from the consequences of their decisions. It's an abstraction. It's not
Yeah.
something they even think about.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and then the even half-assed justifications for anything, which again, they know they don't even need to make, but when those are made, it's kind of going through the list of tried and true um tried and true epithets, about evil Iranians and deception and brutality and corruption. But like there are these very clear kind of pieces of the talking points where that just kind of reaffirm the kind of adage of every every accusation is a confession.
Yeah.
The idea that these are there's a country run by religious fanatics, and therefore the secular people of Iran need to be saved from their theocratic overlords.
Right.
Meanwhile, how many times do we see um, crusader language being used to motivate U.S. troops, or like religious language being used to motivate Israeli troops. There's constant evidence of this. Talking about biblical prophecy. Um,
Well,
and like it's just like everything that is said about Iran is done so in a way to again absolve the United States and Israel of the exact same things that it does. Having nuclear weapons. I mean,
I mean,
just
yeah,
just
name
at
it.
the
Yeah.
base
Yeah, yeah.
level.
Meanwhile,
Like,
we're yeah, yeah, again, Netanyahu also evoked Amlak again. I guess
yeah, yeah,
everyone's Amlak, I suppose.
yeah.
And it's like,
So
and of course, the whole premise of their claim, their land is a fifth century land claim. I mean, it's obviously absurd. And so, yeah, this is I mean, they're all, again, if we're talking about fanatics, but I guess if you go to Johns Hopkins or go to Harvard, it's not, you can be as fanatical as you want.
yeah,
And so, this is a very, very horrific situation. I don't think the so-called regime or the Iranian power structure, such as it is, which is, again, it's built to suffer these so-called decapitation strike. It's a confederate system. It's an autonomous system. They have procedures and contingencies in place for such an event. They've been preparing for it for decades. I don't think they're going to just roll over and let themselves be balkanized or live under some pro-Israel dictator. And I think they know that, and that's why I think the plan is to make it a Lebanon. It's to basically just bomb them in perpetuity. Um, Put up, maybe even have some puppet, whether it's some sort of rent a jihadist they find, or some outside. I don't even know how they would even do that in Iran, but that's the sort of normal playbook. And
I think
then
that's what they want to do. I don't think that's what's gonna
Right. See,
happen.
what you have is you have sort of remnants of the regime who are just humiliated and people are tired of being bombed, which is why I genuinely think they're just going to kill tens of thousands of people because I don't really know any other way this resolves. I don't think, again, they're not going to let a truly democratic system take place. There's not really a so-called dictator, a credible dictator on offer. So the solution is to just humiliate and decimate until they capitulate, not to sort of rhyme there, sorry, but till they finally say, okay, fine. What are your terms? Oh, your terms are we don't have a navy, we don't have missile defense systems, and you stop bombing our universities and ancient ruins and our exquisite brickwork and our neighborhoods and our coffee shops and the places we live. That we're just going to turn your country into Gaza, and we have the technology and the tools and the AI tools to do it very, very efficiently. I know you don't think I know you think you're immune to this because you have 90 million people and you're three times the size of Iraq and you're obviously whatever 100 times the size of Gaza. But we will just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And that's basically what they're saying they're going to do. Trump does this like, well, we'll negotiate routine, and people think, okay, well maybe they'll come to some terms, but I think it's clear they're going to go for broke. And the opposition, such as it was from Democrats in those key moments, because what matters is those key moments when the Armada begins to form on February 18th, when the War Powers Resolution is proposed on February 20th, those key moments are where you can genuinely intervene to the extent to which we have a democracy at all. And what did they do? They tweeted about fucking gas prices. They didn't say shit. They didn't do shit because they wanted it to
Hmm.
happen. And so once the
Hmm.
once the toothpaste is out of the tube, that's it. You can't. There's because then they could just say, "Oh, well, you're putting the troops in harm's way, or they killed 6 Americans, so we have to get revenge." Right? It's like once you've let slip the dogs of war, that's it. It's over. So what you needed to do happened 2 weeks ago, and you didn't do anything while progressives and leftists were screaming at the top of their lungs how fucking how complicit you were. And so That's it. There's no other mechanism to rein any of this in, unless Americans in some meaningful percentage start coming home in body bags. And they, again, I think they have the robots
Inshallah.
to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I think Trump is, and these guys are smart enough to know that as long as you just keep decimating them, doing it's the Israeli playbook. They sent Israeli troops in there here and there when they had to hold a city block, but they would get killed in 5 seconds.
Hmm.
And so they just realized, well, then why are we doing this? Let's just bomb them from afar and starve them. So there's a playbook for siege warfare for launch. Again, these are just people sitting in air conditioned rooms in Bahrain or in Abu Dhabi who are just launching these drones and remote, or they're bombing from so far up you can't see them. Obviously, Iran doesn't really have a meaningful air defense anymore. So why not just keep bombing civilians in schools until you get what you want? And I believe that's going to be the playbook because again, that's why they keep talking about boots in the ground. It's like we don't do that anymore. There's none of these people have any courage. They don't have any dignity. We don't have any dignity. We're going to just bomb from air conditioned rooms and then we're going to
Hmm.
gloat about it. Oh, and by the way, we're going to release our snuff films, like Israel does, or like Marco Rubio did today. These videos of us bombing from whatever 10,000 feet up in the
Yeah.
air, and then gloating about it. Because again, this is we don't have dignity. All we have is SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think already it's clear that this is not going the way that even the non-planning wanted it to go. And unfortunately the wait and see part means that uh tens of thousands of Iranians are going to be slaughtered by this, by the US and Israeli governments, with the support of plenty of other governments around the world. Um, but I don't think that that necessarily is the end of this, and so we will see what the end of this turns into. Obviously, as we follow this, uh, you know, horrible, horrible story. Um, but yeah, I think we'll see what happens on the floor of Congress tomorrow with the vote. But again, I think this is either, it's all procedure. None of it has any morality tethered to it. No one with power is doing anything to to stop the bloodshed. Um, and because that's what Empire does. I mean, this is as you said, this is the playbook, Adam. And so you know uh, uh, nearly 5 decades after the humiliation of the United States by the Iranian people, this is when there's finally a regime in power in here in Washington that has decided to exact even worse vengeance for that humiliation than Iran has suffered and survived in all of those years in between. Um, and yeah, and the Iranian people are gonna, are going to be the kind of dehumanized, detritus of this imperial horror and aggression. And so but we'll see what happens. And I say that, you know uh holding on to the kind of affirmation that you know that fucking with Iran is gonna fuck you up. And so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem like there's anything really containing this, so we'll see. I mean, again, I'm hoping that just cooler heads prevail, but that's obviously not looking likely.
Yeah, I mean, who are the fucking cooler heads, right? So, anyway, I hate to leave it on that note. Although, what other possible note could we leave it on at this point with the way the world is? And so, but I will say this, something positive, which is that we really do appreciate all of our listeners who continue to support this show, who continue to listen and share this show. You know, hopefully there is some sort of collective sense making that we get to do together, some feeling a little less alone in all of this and seeing all the bullshit come our way and seeing all the horrors come our way. Um, you know, as close as we may be to this, obviously, living in the United States or watching this from afar or having family in Iran, however you approach this, I just want to say from the Citations Needed team, thank you so much for continuing to join us, for listening to the show. We really do appreciate it. Makes us feel, or at least I'll say for myself, it makes me feel a little less like I'm going crazy.
No, it does. We're grateful for that.
So that will do it for this Citations Needed live show. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back, I'm sure, soon with more of these live streams and, of course, full-length episodes of Citations Needed and our regular news briefs. If you want to follow us, you can do that on Twitter and Blue Sky at Citations Pod, Facebook, Citations Needed, and become a supporter of the show through patreon.com/citations needed podcast. We are 100% listener funded, so we really appreciate that. If instead you want to give money to a Red Crescent Society that is actually saving lives, I encourage you to do that more. But if you do want to support the show, we really do appreciate it. But that will do it for this live stream. Thank you all again and again and again for listening. Really, really do appreciate it. I'm Nima Shirazi.
I'm Adam Johnson.
Citations Needed. Senior producer is Florence Burrow Adams. Our producer is Julianne Tweeten. Our production assistant is Trinidad Lightburn. The newsletter is by Marco Cardellano. The music is by Grandaddy. Thanks again, everyone.